Level up your LA Kings experience with Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access and rewards. Enjoy great seats to the game in Section 103 along with Yamava Club access and parking included with your purchase. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings shop item at the game. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn perks on each purchase from the only leading ticket company with a rewards program. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings. Do you know the LA Kings have their own culinary partner? It's Superfood, celebrating 10 years and over 1 million meals served. Since 2020, the Kings have trusted Superfood to fuel their players. Now through Simply Lunch, you can bring that same performance-driven food to your office. Because when people eat better, they work better. Visit mysuperfood.com. That's mysuperfd.com. Or call 213-973-6145. Qualified companies can enjoy a free lunch for up to 10 managers.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
All right, welcome back, Kings fans. This is the All the Kings Men recap of the Game 1 playoff series between the LA Kings and Colorado Avalanche. Joining me today, Zach Dooley. How are you doing today, Zach?
Jesse, I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. And I want to apologize in advance because I told you before we would record that I wanted to give a sort of an opening statement, sort of an opening theory about the game, and this is it. I give that, if you had to lose a game, like if you told me before the game started, hey, the Kings are going to lose, I think that's about as good a possible outcome as you could have, given that they lost. So like if I was grading this game, I'd give it an A, except that they lost. So I'm sort of forced to give it a B or a B plus. But given how big of a favorite the Avalanche are, for all the reasons that we don't need to go into, given the amount of talent that is out of the lineup for the Kings, given that they're starting on the road, that it's at altitude, I thought this was a really well-played game, and so apologies in advance if I seem more chipper for a loss, or if the notes that I'm about to run through tend to focus on some negative moments, because in a well-played game, that's sort of, stands out. So just going to dive into it, I think.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, and it's kind of like a B plus is probably super fair. You're just playing a team that you need an A to beat,
Yeah. And listen, that's why these things are 7 games, right? Like,
yeah,
they lost. And I think most people, I know most people expected them to lose, because if you look around the league at media predictions, nobody has the Kings winning this series. And most of the people that have the Avalanche winning this series, having them winning it in a relatively short series. So no surprises there. So right off the bat, in the first, I wasn't really looking at the clock too closely, but I'd say the first 90 seconds or 2 minutes, I felt like the Kings were aggressive right off the bat, and I liked the start. Unfortunately, the Avs then punched back and controlled play for the next 5 minutes, and it wasn't until this one I did write down. I think it was about 6 minutes and 30 seconds into the game until the Kings had their first shot on goal, and that's not ideal. Like, it's fine and all to win the opening faceoff and to carry the puck into the opponent's zone, but you need to, you're going to have to shoot on these guys to score. One thing that wound up not mattering at all, but that got a lot of conversation early, the hit that Lawton took at center ice. I don't even remember who it was now.
It was Josh Manson. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't think that was interference. I did think it was a headshot.
As I thought that live, I thought it was both interference and a headshot. I watched it back. I don't think it was a headshot. I thought it was shoulder to shoulder maybe into the head, but shoulder being the primary point of contact for me. I definitely thought it was interference. Here's how I look at it, and maybe you disagree, is like, if that is the standard, I'm okay with that not being interference, if that is the standard. Because it was the puck was in the vicinity. He did not have the puck, but the puck was, a stick length, less than a stick length away.
The reason I don't have it as interference is specifically what you just mentioned, which is the standard. And while I won't fight anybody who wants to say that by the clinical definition of interference it qualifies, that call, if you wanted to fix a hockey game, interference penalties, called or non-called, is how you would do it.
You'd have 9 a night.
Those
each
puck
way.
battles are, and it'll come up later in the game. Not calling interference is, to me, the biggest pet peeve in my hockey watching experience. The amount of times that guys interfere with other players and it doesn't get called, and the justification is, oh, they're battling for the puck before either one of them touches the puck. It's like, well, I believe that the definition of interference is interfering with a player who doesn't have the puck. So,
I mean, you notice it on every dump in, right? A dump in,
100%.
forward goes around, defenseman goes out. And then if you were calling it by the book, the entire game would probably be spent on the power play.
How many guys that are lauded for reverse checks are just interfering with the bat, with a forechecker trying to stop them from getting, anyway, whatever. I did think it was a headshot, but I, like I said, it wound up not mattering nearly as much as I thought it would.
I thought it was a penalty. However, you're right. Ultimately, I mean, I guess we don't know if it mattered or not.
Yeah, I just didn't think the officiating was that crucial.
I didn't think the officiating determined the outcome.
No, not at all.
Disagreed with some calls both ways, or felt certain things should have been called that weren't. But ultimately, I think both teams had 4 power plays. And while I didn't think the standard was upheld because the Kings were called for interference later in the game, I didn't think that it impacted the score.
Speaking of that, the next note I have is first penalty, a slashing call against the Kings. I didn't see a slash, just a broken dropped stick. Lame. Kill it. And then when they showed the replay, I added, wow, weak penalty, extra lame, 11 minutes in. And I think I tweeted out, is the slashing penalty in the room with us? Because that felt to me like I didn't see a slash. I saw a stick hit the ice, and I saw the ref maybe see the stick hit the ice and think, oh, that must have occurred as a result of a slash. I thought that was a particularly weak penalty, but in the grand scheme of things, the Kings, quote unquote, won the special teams battle, so I'm not too concerned with it.
They called the outcome, not the action. Yeah. Right? And it's one that you can maybe understand from the official's point of view, where you see stick on stick contact, you see broken stick, you make the call.
Yeah.
That stick was broken before the contact happened.
Yeah.
That was a bad call.
And the contact wasn't egregious.
That happens 100 times a game and it goes uncalled. That was not a slash. They called the outcome, which was there was stick on stick contact and the stick broke.
Yeah.
And
I didn't like that.
Now, it also led to what I felt was one of the best Kings penalty kills that we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen.
That first one was excellent.
That's why I wanted to throw out that opening statement, is like, there's going to be moments where I feel like I'm trending negative, but generally speaking, I know the Kings played a really great game. Next note I have is Clark tried a dipsy doodle move through the neutral zone, and he's not good enough to pull it off. And I don't mean that as a knock on Brandt Clark. I just mean he tried. There's a goal in, I think it was the New Jersey Devils series from 2012, where Doughty makes an end-to-end rush and winds up scoring.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only so many moments in history where a defenseman can pull off a play like that. And if you can't pull it off, I need you to not try it. Like, find a different way to advance the puck from one zone to the next, because outplaying your ability is a recipe for turnovers, and in the playoffs you can't afford that kind of thing. So not a huge deal. I just saw, and good for Clark for being ambitious, and I trust that he will learn from that and either pull it off the next time by learning what he needs to do to improve, or just not trying it again.
I think that you just, when you're a player like that, right, you just have to maybe understand the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that might have worked in the regular season. It's unlikely to work for most players in the playoffs. I mean, even Cale Makar, he is one who can do that. But there were multiple times where he rushed up and the Kings were able to break up plays that maybe they don't break up in the regular season.
Yeah.
But they broke it up in game one.
But even your Makars or McKinnons or even a McDavid, like I was watching recently the top 10 plays of McDavid's career, I don't know why, on YouTube. And you see the plays where he like goes in against 5 guys by himself and beats them all. And the natural inclination is to say, well, why don't you just do that every time? And the answer is you can't.
Nobody
right?
can.
What makes him impressive is that he's able to do it once in a while. But even the best play, even Cale Makar can't do that kind of move all game long, every game. Otherwise, that you're Gretzky times 1,000 or whatever. Anyway. So moving on, then at near the end of the period, I have the counterpunch finally has tenacity with 3 minutes left. I don't know that tenacity is the word I wanted to use. I think what I wanted to say was just consistency, right? Like they'd have chances, but it wasn't until late in the first period that they had prolonged is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
A prolonged stretch of offensive pressure.
I think I know what you're referring to, and I feel like I remember the same moment. There were probably 3 shifts in the first where you're like, that's it right there. And they sustained ozone time and worked it around the outside. It led to shot attempts, shots on goal, whatever it was. And then you're like, okay, like that's the pushback. That's like Colorado's going to have more of those shifts, but the Kings can't not have those shifts. And they got 2 or 3 in the second half of the first where you're like, okay, like you're starting to feel a little bit better.
And unfortunately, the end of that flurry was probably Doughty missing the empty net.
That was, for sure.
Now, upon watching the replay, I don't blame him for missing the net because it was like on a backhand. It
was kind of a spinning play. It was a weird play from a player who's not usually in that position.
Yeah, but I did write, I hope that wasn't the best chance for the series. Next goal wins the series, ? I hate my brain. And
next goal wins the series at 0-0 in game 1.
Yes, which is why I followed it up with I hate my brain. Because all I could think was, wow, what a great opportunity, right? Like in game 1 in the first period to take a 1-0 lead against the team that's such an overwhelming favorite. As I said to Jim Fox in the series preview, like I truly believe that flipping the pressure in this series it may not be the only way to win the series, but it's a huge way to at least give yourself an advantage where none exist. And so I just felt like, oh man, that because they got outchanced in the first period, because they had that stretch of play with all the chances, and because they had an opportunity, sometimes I wonder if a missed opportunity doesn't physically hurt. And I think we've talked to Jim about this over the years, where if you miss a shot, and certainly I think you can relate to this on golf, like if you physically prepare yourself for a massive drive off your tee shot and you blow it, it hurts. Like even if you don't, ground the club or do something terrible, like if you just hook it or slice it or just top the ball or something, but like it mentally, physically, you felt like, oh man, I'm gonna drill this shot, and then you flub it. It's kind of like it just hurts.
It's kind of like when you par the hole before, and then you get up and say, I'm gonna keep this going. It's like they had the good shift, and then it's like, oh, here's the opportunity to like build on it and then turn, and that's kind of I agree.
It's deflating. It's hard to be like, oh, now we have to go start from scratch and begin that momentum.
Yeah. So it's funny because like you'd probably say Colorado had more chances in the first, but if you said what was the best chance to open the scoring in the first, it was probably that one. For either team, that was probably the best one chance in the period.
I think I heard Jim say a few times on the telecast, Colorado had more chances, but the Kings had better chances.
That is what the numbers would suggest. Yes. I don't know if in the first specifically, but throughout the course of the game, the numbers would suggest that the Kings had more of the dangerous chances, even if they had maybe fewer total chances.
So in the intermission, I wrote down good first period, didn't get embarrassed, didn't surrender a goal, didn't score, but generated chances. And here I have the confirmation that what I heard was right, which is broadcast, Kings better chances, Avs more chances. Summary, I'll take it, need to end the second with a lead, score early, don't surrender early. And then not that this is relevant at all, but the deserve to win-o-meter had the Kings up 54.6% at the end of the first period. So good enough.
I think that jives with the numbers, right? Like it's one of those where the numbers, I don't want to say they defied the eye test, but they a little bit pushed back on the narrative of like, well, Colorado had more of everything, even though the Kings battled hard. Like the numbers suggest that it was extremely even.
Yeah.
And even the attempts, like Colorado had more, at 5-on-5, but it was only it was not much more. It was actually, extremely even numbers wise across the board.
Yeah. And I should probably save this thought till the end, but going into this series, we knew Colorado didn't have a good power play, which means they're better than everybody in the league at 5-on-5. And being better than everybody in the league at 5-on-5 by that much is how you finished. For those listening to the audio version, I just held up my fingers very close to themselves. That's how you wind up with the most goals scored, the fewest goals allowed, and whatever plus 97 goal differential or whatever. Like, it doesn't require you to be dominant at 5-on-5. You just have to be a little bit better than everybody else every night, and that's kind of what I felt like this game was. All right, so second period. Notes are Avs pressing early. Here we go. This was the play I thought was the Lawton one earlier. Matthew Joseph chicken winged on an Avs player. Not sure it's interference, but definitely elbowing. I guess it was going the other way. I felt Matthew Joseph elbowed a dude in the head. He was called for interference, I think.
He was called for interference. I think they're not even remotely the same play, that one and the Lawton play.
No.
But when you look at
different directions in that one.
And different zone, nothing was similar. Yeah. But I do think that's an example of, like, okay, you call both or you call neither. If the officiating were to be consistent, so those should have both been called.
That's why I highlighted the head contact on both of those. Because in the Lawton play, in my mind, both guys are facing the same way. Both guys are moving in the same direction towards the puck. It's an open ice conflict in the neutral zone. If I remember correctly, the Joseph play, they're heading in opposite directions. It's in the attacking zone. And I genuinely thought, I don't know that it was intentional because the one guy was bent over a little bit, but I did think that Joseph elbowed him in the head, and that's dangerous. And anyway.
I think they both should have been penalties, personally.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And I think that there was enough. I thought they both should have been penalties. It was just my personal take. The only problem that I really have with it is that one was called and the other wasn't. If they're both called or both not called, I feel like you have defined a standard. And then when you call one and not the other, that's all what I would feel about it.
Next note is Forsberg already in Colorado's head? And that's because Colorado, for the first, 3 or 4 minutes of the second period, that's when the shots start to get poured on, and especially on that power play. And Forsberg made some really great saves. And, I keep reading like people saying, oh, well, Forsberg's going to have to be Jonathan Quick in 2012. I don't think it's necessarily true, because I think, 60% of good goaltending is just getting in your opponent's head early and forcing them to pass up good shots because they feel like they have to have a perfect shot to beat you. And I started to see Colorado maybe overpassing a little bit, maybe being a little bit too hesitant, trying to be too cute. So I don't think he has to be Jonathan Quick 2012, but I do think he has to be very good. Yeah, absolutely.
Like very, very good. And I thought that he was.
No question.
You never would have known that was that dude's first start in the Stanley Cup playoffs ever.
Which I didn't, on full disclosure, did not realize until I heard it on the broadcast.
His last playoff start was Game 4 of the 2016 Calder Cup final with Lake Erie.
Did not know that. Yeah, coach.
Really impressive.
Yeah.
And you were talking about like that stretch, right? I felt like at the end of one, the shots were like 8-5 Colorado, and then all of a sudden it was like 18-7.
Yeah.
And then you started to have that feeling, right, of like, okay, this is starting to trend a certain kind of way, and Anton Forsberg has been unbelievably good to keep it 0-0. And then
if the Avs had scored within the first 2 or 3 minutes of the second period, I was terrified that it was going to be like 6-0 by the end of the second period. Next note I have is Dumoulin eats a shot, gets hurt, can't lose him for too long. Fortunately, he was back before the telecast even before they were done showing the replay of him eating the shot, he was already back on the bench. So
it was because he blocked the shot and then the disallowed goal.
Yes. And let's talk about the disallowed goal.
Yeah.
Sorry, finish your thought though, and we'll come back.
No, I was just going to say he was back on the ice for the shift after the disallowed goal.
Right.
You wouldn't see it on the broadcast, but I could see it in arena. He was on there, but then the Kings got the power play, So he went off, and he didn't actually take a shift for like 3-4 minutes
Yeah.
after that. But he was back like the
Yeah.
next shift after that goal.
And they said on the telecast that he like went immediately down the tunnel, walked around
He did.
to the locker room, and came back out.
Okay.
Which of course you can't see on the telecast, but
maybe it's a Charlie horse kind of thing. Hopefully.
Yeah. So the goal that got called back, I'm conflicted about, because
Fair.
on the one hand, I'm thrilled that it didn't count. On the other hand, I can absolutely concede that contact was made and the blue paint, factored into it. And Doughty, blah, 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 blah. I don't think Forsberg makes that save regardless of what happens around him in that moment. I think that was a good goal. I'm not going to push back too hard because it benefits the Kings that it didn't count. But if I showed my 80-year-old mother who doesn't care about hockey that play, she's like, yeah, he got scored on. I don't understand what the big deal is.
I think I disagree with you for a few reasons.
All right.
One, I completely disagree that the contact did not impact his ability to make the save. I think he makes that save squarely without getting bowled over.
Fair enough.
Which is just, hey, that's my opinion, your opinion.
Yeah,
right? Like, I don't know.
we just disagree.
We don't know. This is not to disagree. I think that call on the ice stands regardless of what the call on the ice was. So I think it really benefited the Kings that the call on the ice was no goal. 100%. I don't know if that gets overturned if the Kings challenged a goal. I think it stands. Right. I felt too that there was clearly contact, Doughty, and I think it was Jack Drury. I felt that Drury going to that area initiated the contact, even though it was Doughty's hip that kind of bumped him in. I thought that Drew had the positioning and Drury went into that area to draw the contact. He got the contact and then went in. I didn't think Drew moved out of his way to hit him into the goalie like you sometimes see, defensemen clearly two-hand shoves. He
wasn't pushing him into him.
I felt it was a fairly light bump with the hip.
Yeah.
But all that being said,
the call on the ice was going to stand. And once they showed the replay, I was a bit stunned that the Avs challenged it because
me too.
You saw what happened, which is they lost the challenge. Then the Kings go on the power play.
Yeah.
And
that's a big moment, right? For an underdog.
Huge. And I'm so glad you used the word moment, because I wrote have to score on the power play. No goal, but feels like the Kings are outworking the Avs. And then I think it was on the power play, Panarin misses the empty net off of. It's rare that I think I'll remember a pass on a play that didn't result in a scoring chance, but that pass from Kopitar to Panarin was awesome.
It was unbelievable.
I wrote down LA Kings leading Avs 3 moments to 1. Because at that point it's still 0-0.
Yeah.
But the Kings, I just felt like, okay, we've missed 2 empty nets. We've missed 2 scoring chances. The Avs got a goal, but it got called back. Mm-hmm. Things are lining up well for the Kings. So I was pleased in that moment. Although, boy, that at that point, so now, like I said, the Kings are winning 3 moments to 1 by my made-up counter. But you can't miss 2 empty nets.
100%. That's the difference, right? Like, to that point, from the start of the game to the Panarin play, the 2 best goal scoring opportunities were both by the Kings. Yep. The Doughty one and the Panarin one, in my opinion. There could have been maybe there's an unbelievable save I'm forgetting, but Colorado had more chances, but the best 2 chances to make the game 1-0 were both LA.
Yeah.
And they were both.
And once you
missed.
make it 1-0, everything that happens after, right? Like everything that happened after the missed Doughty chance.
It's a new timeline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's all new. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe that chance doesn't even happen. Who knows? Maybe the Avs don't challenge that play if they're down 1-0. I don't know.
Yeah. Next note is McKinnon dives 55 to box for tripping, maybe not a dive. That's one of those plays where when I watched it in live speed, I was like, oh, that's a dive. Then I went and watched the replay and I was like, he wasn't diving. It just wasn't clearly an intentional trip. Byfield's stick did get caught up in McKinnon's skates. And he tripped him. It's unfortunate. And I think it'll help feed the narrative that Colorado dives, which is funny because I don't think they dive. I do think they act like they're shot every time somebody looks at their shoulders or above. Which
Yeah.
is two totally different forms of embellishment.
What people I think missed on the trip too was Byfield was slightly interfered with as he wound up. He was bumped, which threw him off balance, which threw his stick into McKinnon's skate. That is a trip. Like the stick, skates, fall. That's a trip.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
However, it wasn't like, I think that the penalty was less on cue because I thought he was bumped off balance as he wound up, and that threw him forward into the trip.
Fair. Yeah.
It's something I picked up on. I don't think that the bump it wasn't enough to call it, but that, like, it wasn't just like as dumb of a penalty as maybe it looked. I thought he was kind of off balance. It was kind of more unfortunate than anything.
Yeah. Yes. Unfortunate is the perfect word for it. The next two notes I have is Armia draws a penalty and then not great officiating, but not terrible. And that's kind of my take on the officiating the entire game. Like there were calls you could disagree with one way or the other, but generally speaking, I thought it was a pretty fair game. And God, I hate saying this, but given that we know that referees and officials will try and balance out the calls for a quote unquote fair game.
Yeah.
I don't think you can, like, I've seen people say like, oh, you can't give Colorado a penalty that late in the game, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, they gave the Kings one too. So like
2 minutes before.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Lex note, 5 minutes left. Not in a dirty way, but way more after the whistle stuff from the Kings. They don't look soft. There was just a lot more attitude, a lot more pushing, shoving. Hey, don't take us for granted kind of stuff from the Kings that I was really impressed by through the whole game.
I always felt that over the last 4 years, Edmonton was the aggressor in that department. Yes. Mm-hmm. And it always actually, I don't want to say bothered me, but I always wanted the Kings to do more of it.
Yep.
And assert in those moments. And I thought that they did more of that yesterday. Now that game one, it didn't feel like an Edmonton game at all. It felt substantially lesser in the extracurriculars department for me.
Okay.
The intent, like the animosity felt less. But I agree that I thought, it was the Kings, especially the Kings defensemen, who I thought kind of stepped up in that area, the extra cross checks, the physicality. And I think that the Kings need to do more of that than they did, but I thought that they were the more assertive team in that department. Yeah.
Now then, so Avalanche then go on a run with, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes left in the second.
Started with that power play. That power play, I feel like they really kind of had some attempts, and Forsberg was at his best, I thought, on that power play.
And that's when Armia draws that penalty, which makes it 4-4 for a while. Then the Avalanche score, and the only note I have is don't let it avalanche out of control now.
100%. But you're like, you get to the period 1-0, right? At that point, you're like, okay, that play is going to happen. It can't become 2 or 3.
Fly at 11, right? Be a goldfish. Like, okay, they scored, fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
And I do want to talk about that goal because I saw a lot of people complaining about it. I don't think either of the 2 goals Forsberg allowed are particularly egregious. Like, could Doughty have played the man better in front of the net? Sure, yes, he could have. But the puck comes in from a weird angle. It bounces off of Forsberg. It bounces off of something else. I think it might have hit off of 2 or 3 different pieces of equipment on different guys. It winds up landing directly on the guy's stick, 2 feet out from the net. Maybe if Doughty, interferes with him and tackles him and ties up his entire, stick and body and hands rather than just his upper body, maybe it prevents a goal. But I'm just not agitated enough about that play to say like, they shouldn't have never allowed. Like, Colorado's going to score. That's what they do. And I thought of all the kinds of goals to surrender in the playoffs, I'm not upset about that one.
Look, the Kings got beat in 2 battles on that play.
Yeah.
But that was a rarity in the game, right? Like I thought Drew Doughty played a really, really good game. And that was probably the only blemish was,
and
like
Mikey
he got
beat on the board.
And Mikey got beat they both got beat on the same play. But they logged McKinnon on as much as anybody. And I thought that they carried that matchup about as well as you could expect in game one. So you give up one goal to that line off of a forechecking play. If you said at the beginning of the game that line would score one goal in game one, you would have said deal.
And it was maybe this is silly given the final score, I thought a relatively quiet goal.
It wasn't like, okay, that it was 5 sustained shifts. The Kings won a D-zone draw, and Colorado, to their credit, used their speed and their ability to win on the forecheck, and they got the goal.
And it's not like Nathan McKinnon came down and did, a McDavid-esque or
didn't dog walk anybody.
Yeah, or like when Leon Draisaitl nails a one-timer from the goal line, and you're just like, oh,
for the 25th time.
What are you supposed to do? Like, like, okay, that was an effort goal. And you got to work hard to stop that from happening. So, next up, moving into second period ends 1-0. I wrote Kings put pressure back after first goal, but need to score obviously in the third. Avs third line killing it. Kings fourth line not pushing back enough. That Avalanche third line, Zach, I haven't hated a bottom six trio of players after one game more than I was tired about hearing Jack Drury, whatever O'Connor's first name is, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the third gentleman's name.
That's their fourth line.
Well, okay, their fourth line then.
Yeah, Kiviranta.
They were so good, and it was so annoying. They finished the game 12 shot attempts for, 4 shot attempts against. Yeah, the fourth line. Yeah. Joel Kiviranta, Jack Drury, and Logan O'Connor. Compared to the Kings' fourth line, it reminded me of, was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago that the Edmonton Oilers' fourth line, I don't even remember the guys' names anymore, but it was like
the Klim Kostin year.
Yes, thank you. That's his name, Klim Kostin. Yes, there was that one year where you're just like, who are these guys? I've never heard of these guys, and they're the ones that wind up winning the series for you.
Here's Colorado. Their first line is the first line. Their second line is the second line. Their third line is the second line, and their fourth line is the third line.
Yeah,
that's the third line.
Why I thought that was the third line, but yes, no. Looking at
they are, and they are like those are.
Yeah,
those are third line caliber players. Man, they had a good. They had the disallowed goal too. Drury was the guy driving. They had a great night, and honestly, it was probably the biggest mismatch, right? Like I thought that the third line for the Kings, I liked the way they played. I thought they worked so hard, and the fourth line, they worked hard, no doubt about it. But I thought they kind of got caved in most times they were out there. And
they 100% did. But I'm not even going to blame them, because this is why, somebody asked me last night, like, well, what do you do about some of these things? And it's like, well, when Joseph Malott and Hellenius are all 1 shot attempt for, double-digit shot attempts against, and that fourth line for Colorado is 12 shot attempts for, 4 shot attempts against, and controlling the expected goals for share battle, and they score the game-winning goal, like, I'm not sure that there's much you can do about that. If their depth players are just that much better than your depth players, that's why one team is the 1 seed and one team is the wild card too. Like that's what laying in your bed after you make it looks like, unfortunately.
I don't want to, like, this is probably a little bit of the reason why Jim Hiller coached the way that he did last year.
Yeah.
To an extent, right? He didn't know what would happen, but he coached to avoid that happening.
Yes.
It may not have happened. The fourth line may have given you excellent minutes against the Oilers last year. We would don't know. They didn't get the chance. But it was almost like the coaching strategy last year, I think, was done to avoid a 1 to 12.
And ironically, I think if the Kings had played like they did last night, all 4 years against Edmonton, they would have won at least one of those series, if not more.
If not multiple.
Yeah. So moving on to the third period, nice hip check by Anderson 30 seconds in.
Yep. Remember that moment.
Not that important, but
it was a nice hip check.
Yeah, it was. This, I don't know. I wish I knew more about the relationship between Drew Doughty and Brock Nelson. Because at one point, Doughty appeared to be allowing Brock Nelson to just throw him around after the whistle. And
he almost like picked him up.
Yeah, and I was like, what is that? Like, because if it had been Andrzej Kopitar, I'd say, like, okay, that's a Selke winner. No, not Selke. That's a Lady Bing winner. Like, you don't expect it out of it. But it's Drew Doughty. Like, there are highlight reels on YouTube where you can watch him scream at people and insult them and be rude. And so I'm just like, what are you
going on
doing?
here?
So I was like, maybe they know each other. Maybe that's playful. I don't know. It just felt bizarre in a game where it was 1-0 in the playoffs. Then I wrote Colorado pressing, Kings playing like the altitude might be affecting. Now, I spoke to Jared Shaffron about this already offline, but I concede this is probably a result of the difference in the way I consume media in 2026 as to when I did in the 90s and early 2000s. I remember growing up, every single conversation about a sporting event that took place in the city of Denver was 75% conversation about altitude and 25% about the two different teams participating. And I feel like I have not heard anybody talking about the altitude in this series. And for anybody listening who has no idea what I'm talking about, Denver is referred to as the Mile High City because it is up in the mountains, thinner oxygen. If you're not used to it, you get tired early, you're gasping for air. It has been part of the conversation about Denver sports my entire lifetime. Rockies, Nuggets, Broncos, Avs. It's always been a part of the conversation, and I just did not hear any of it. Now, Shaffron corrected me and said that, in fact, has been mentioned specifically by you guys. I just didn't hear it, so I don't know.
Well, thanks for listening.
Sorry.
I think that two reasons for that. One, this matchup was determined in the third period of Game 82.
Totally. There just wasn't time, yeah.
And it was a matinee. So there was no morning skate to be asked about it. There was no conversation about it because it was like they played in Calgary. They came home. It was a day off. They practiced and flew on the same day. And all of the conversation was about the series on that practice day. And then there was no morning skate in Denver to bring it up. So it really wasn't brought up once in a scrum because I think of timing. I also think that the matinee helped mentally because the morning skate there, I feel like it always comes up, and it's always like when you play at 1, it's like you just get thrust in and you got to go.
Yeah.
And I think that helped almost mentally to overcome it. And you're right. I was on I do the radio intermission interviews on the road with Josh, and Joel Edmondson brought it up as like, we didn't know, and we're happy with how we handled the altitude. Like he proactively said it after the first period. But that was the only time I heard a player really talk about it the entire time.
And again, this is why I say it might have more to do with how I consume media. Like I watched a bunch of series previews, but I watched them 50% attention because I knew I had to get through so many of them in such a short period of time. And like ordinarily, maybe I would listen to an entire episode of 32 Thoughts breaking down all of the series. I don't think that even existed because there was such a short span of time between the end of the season and the start of the playoffs. Moving on in the notes, then Colorado scores. And I wrote, look, that goal is nobody's fault, but that's why you have to bury your chances early.
Yeah.
Like that goal, 8 different things went wrong. I'm not even going to pin it on anybody. If that's a goal for the Kings, you just go, oh, sweet, take it and run. Like,
yeah.
But
it's one of those
empty nets.
It's one of those goals that can't happen, but also there were so many reasons why it did.
Yeah.
It was a tough one, I think, for the fourth line. Like when that puck has to just get further down the ice.
Yeah.
No matter what the reasons were why it didn't, that puck has to get further down the ice.
Yeah.
And it was a tough one, and that Logan O'Connor I thought was really good. But he kind of deserved his goal. That line, like you mentioned, that line deserved to score.
Yeah.
They were very good. But it's one that if you're the Kings, and it was and I'm just going to bring it. It was a shame that Dumoulin and Ceci were on the ice for it because I thought that was one of their best games that they played as a pair.
I mean, I genuinely hate saying something is nobody's fault.
Yeah,
but I just don't blame anybody for that goal. That was just one of those goals where everything went wrong, and what are you going to do?
Yeah, it was a tough one. It was kind of it felt in the moment almost like it could have been a backbreaker.
Yeah.
It wasn't, but it kind of had that vibe of like that. That just couldn't happen. Like it had to somewhere along the line that play had to have been neutralized. The Kings neutralized that play all night, and then they didn't there, and they got torched.
Yeah. Next note I have, and obviously I wrote it down wrong because I'm looking at the penalties from last night, trying to figure out when it would have happened, and I'm not sure which one it was. It must have been the tripping call. No, because I have kneeing penalty must score. Don't be shut out for the first time all year. I don't see a penalty for kneeing, so it. I think it was the Landeskog penalty for tripping Armia, but I mean,
it was Armia draw. Must have been Armia drawing the trip.
Yeah, but I mean, he kneed him, so whatever. And I just really felt like at that point you're down 2-0. You've been outplayed by Colorado's bottom six. You've kept their top players to a quiet night. As silly as it was at that point, I just didn't want the Kings to be shut out.
It would have been funny because all that talk of like 82 games, one of the only teams in the league, and then you're like, is it going to frickin' happen in game one?
Yes, and it's symbolic. It doesn't really matter, but I just
it doesn't mean anything, right?
Yeah, and in the Kings' defense, they had a great power play.
Yeah, I mean they got the one late. It was 6-on-5 or 6-on-4. They pulled the goalie, and look, Artemi Panarin. We talked to him on Saturday, and he said in the playoffs, there's less time and space to make plays in the power play. We're going to have to keep it simple. We're going to have to shoot pucks from up high and get 3 players to the front of the net. And in that moment, he cycled up high, shot it from up top, had players in front of the net, and it went in.
Yeah, so my notes stop coming as regularly at this point because, now I'm just like
it's really a 2-1 game.
Watching and I'm just like not really thinking about every little thing. I'm just going to sort of read some free flowing thoughts. Avs not giving up any pressure. Kings playing with heart and spirit. Kempe and Landeskog tussle. That was the weirdest thing. I don't know what happened in the arena. I'm watching the telecast and I'm seeing footage of Kempe on the bench while they're describing what is happening seemingly on the ice involving Landeskog and Kempe. But I'm looking at Kempe on the bench and I'm thinking to myself, what tomfoolery is this with, what Ocean's 11 pre-recorded heist footage am I watching? Like they're talking about Kempe getting locked up. I'm looking at him. He's just sitting there.
Did they show
the replay? They did. And they showed the ref pushing him to the bench before then getting him the penalty. But it was just a weird, it was just a weird 2 seconds of time.
They called both. Yeah. It was even longer. Like it was like a 10-second delay where only the Landeskog was in the box. Kempe literally went to the bench and was like on the bench, and they had to go get him from the bench and bring him to the box. Did they show on the broadcast the clip of Kempe in the box?
I don't remember if they did.
So in the arena, they did like a back and forth cam between like Kempe in the box and Landeskog, and it would be like they put it on Kempe, and the entire crowd is booing. And Adrian Kempe is just sitting in the box, booing them back. He's just going boo.
I didn't see that.
While they're all booing him, and he's just like boo. It was hilarious. And then they go to Landeskog and they cheer, and then they go back to Kempe, and he's just laughing. It was like that guy. He's just a dog,
he was. I mean, he was their best player.
He's a dog.
Yeah. So next note I have is Nelson called for high sticking, but Kempe was 100% committing interference prior to the high stick. And there's another opinion where I say, like, if you wanted to fix a game, interference calls versus no calls is how you do it. Because they got Nelson for high sticking. He 100% high sticked him. They had to call that.
They missed calls both ways, right? Like, the most egregious one of the night was where Joel Edmondson had the leg out, guy trips right over it. They don't call it. Like there were plenty, that benefited the Kings as well. Which is why I think that officiating did not really determine the game.
No, exactly. So the Kings score, we talked about that 6-on-5. In my notes, all caps, nice. Steal this one more to go. Because at that point, it's late in the game. I mean, super late in the game. But at that point, you're like, all right, look. It's 2-1. There's 2.5 minutes left. You're the heavy underdog. You've played this team close. You've gone to overtime 33 times, whatever it is. Why not? Right? Like, this team has conditioned me at this point to believe that they can, even though half of those overtime games were games where the Kings gave up the lead rather than came back from behind and gained a tie. I just believed that it was possible. So it didn't happen. Then Armia takes the penalty, and I wrote, okay, Armia did high stick him, but why is the back ref calling it? I don't love that. But I mean, they called, Nelson on the high stick, so like whatever.
Yep.
Timeout, 52 seconds left, Avs on the power play. And then I wrote, wow, this was a good game regardless of outcome with 21 seconds left. And then at the final whistle, oh, well, let's see if you can do it again effort-wise. So that's the game. And, I've had 12 hours to think about it now, 24 hours almost. I think that game is, how do I want to put this? Not a perfect encapsulation of the season, because I thought it was clearly a more positive tilt. But at the end of 82 games, if you were evaluating this Kings team, I think you could, depending on your internal wiring, you could look at the Kings and go, okay, listen, they made overtime 40% of the time. This is a team that compete with anybody. Or you could say, oh, this team goes to overtime 40% of the time. They can't beat anybody.
Yeah.
You could, it's up to your interpretation of what this team is. Like, the only thing we know about this team is that they're consistent enough to be in everything, but inconsistent enough to put everything away. This game to me felt like that. If you want to look at this game and go, oh, wow, 2-1, that should have been a blowout. They fought with them. They were close late. Just repeat that effort and you are in this series. But by the same token, if you want to look at that game and go, oh, wow, you gave them everything you had and you still lost 2-1. How hard is it going to be to replicate that kind of like, did the Kings play their best game? No, but neither did the Avs. Like, you can't tell me that McKinnon and Makar had their best game.
Right.
Like, no chance. So I'm really, really happy with that as a first game in this series. My hope is that they do replicate that effort and they will win some games and could win the series. My fear is that was their best chance to take a lead in the series and they missed it. And now they've missed their chance.
It's like a combination of disappointment and optimism.
Yeah.
That you got both, right? Because ultimately you lost, and whether you lose 2-1 playing pretty valiantly or 8-1 and get your doors blown off, you lose in the playoffs, and the loss is a loss.
Yep.
But you could clearly see a game plan being executed that would give the Kings a chance to win games in the series, maybe win the series. Like, you could see what they were trying to do. You could see them doing it well. And if they just got the timely goals, it probably works closely to perfection in that game. They didn't, but it's like that was the missing ingredient.
So in my lifetime, the Kings have really only been a dominant franchise for about 3 years. It's 2012 to 2014. Outside of those years, the Kings still have some unbelievable playoff performances, right? Like the Miracle on Manchester, the frenzy on Figueroa, even the reverse sweep against the Sharks. Had they not gone on to win the Cup that year, that would have been an unbelievable first round. Yeah. So, like, for a team that doesn't have a ton of championships, the Kings have a ton of first round moments that have to be remembered and talked about when you're talking about big comebacks or upsets or both. So my thought going into this series was, okay, yeah, obviously Colorado's the underdog or the favorite. Obviously there's a reason for that. We all know it. And I tried to sort of crowbar it into my conversation with Jim Fox previewing the series. This is the kind of series that's lost by the favorite when pressure is flipped. And it's only one game. There's still, between 3 and 6 games left in the series. I just really felt like if you could go in, punch Colorado in the mouth, catch them completely off guard, and come away with a 1-0 lead in the series, that would go a long way towards activating that pressure and giving you a huge advantage. They had the opportunity to do it, and they didn't. And that's disappointing. So now the question, like I said, it comes down to hope versus fear. The question is, can you do it again? Because coming home with a split, however you get it, whether you win game 1 or win game 2, if the Kings can come home with a split, that's the pressure's flipped, right? Like the home
huge
ice
win
lost.
for the Kings.
Yeah,
yes,
100%.
And if you can because then you come home and say, you know what, like let's split again.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
the shorter you can make this series, the better it is for the Kings. Like I think if you're like, you want this to be a best of 1.
Yeah,
you want it to be a best of 3. You want it to become a best. Like that's how you want to have this series go for the Kings as the underdog. Your odds just get better and better the shorter you can make the series against this team.
And it's part of the reason I said to Jim, I think the first team to 2 wins, and it's a silly thing, and obviously it's not true, but in my head, if Colorado wins game 2 and the Kings come back down 2-0, well, then the Kings' backs are against the wall. Because then you have to win both at home. And if you lose even 1 at home, then you're down 3-1, and then it just becomes a mental nightmare. But if you split in Colorado and go back home up or tied 1-1, then if you win 1 at home, especially game 3, right? And that crowd's going to be incredible. I don't know. So I just, like I said, I'm torn between being really, really impressed and happy with the play of the game and disappointed that the opportunity was missed, because part of it just is after so many disappointing playoff games over the last 4 years. And this has everything to do with expectations, not results. That playoff game was exceeded expectations.
I thought so.
And that was fun.
Yeah. We talked with DJ Smith this morning for like an in-between games avail. Yeah. And I thought this quote summed it up perfectly. He said, I think we were good, but in order to beat this team, we're going to have to be better than good.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think that sums it up pretty well. Like the Kings were good in pretty much every facet, right? Like they were good, but to beat Colorado, you have to be great or some variation of great.
And I think part of what annoys me about this Colorado team is, as I said earlier, I don't think, yes, they have superstars, but when you watch them, they're not superstars in the way that like Connor McDavid is a superstar, where like Nathan McKinnon rarely does something that no other human being on the planet can do, where you're like, oh, that dude's a cheat code, right? Cale Makar is very, very good, but you can see how he's very, very good. Nathan McKinnon is very, very, very good, but you can see how he's very, very, very good. There's rarely moments where you go, well, what are you supposed to do about that? Like,
I think I disagree with you, but I think
fair.
I know what you're saying. I've watched those two dudes do a lot of things. You're like, what are you supposed to do?
And I mean, obviously they've earned their reputation. I just mean like Colorado, like for example, the power play is not very good for Colorado. Whereas Edmonton's power play in some years is like north of 30 or 40%. And you just go, okay, with an extra attacker, there's nothing you can do. And like I said, that means to me that what Colorado does is beat you 5-on-5, which is the majority of the game, which means you not only have to be better than them for a little bit, you have to be better than them for 60 minutes or 55 minutes or whatever percentage of the game is played at 5-on-5. You can't wait for the special teams play to bail you out. You have to beat them. And hopefully the Kings will do that 4 more times in this series.
Yeah. And you know what? The 5-on-5 numbers 1 game in are encouraging because like you said, Colorado shot attempts, percentage controlled, scoring chances. They're top 2 in the league. It's Colorado and Carolina in most categories. And attempts were very close per natural stat trick. Colorado a slight advantage. Scoring chances, 22-20 Kings. High danger chances, 10-9 Kings. Per natural stat trick, game 1, 5-on-5. That is encouraging. And if those numbers are able to maintain throughout the series, the Kings will have a shot.
Yeah, and we'll just, I mean, that's why they play the game. We just gotta tune in and watch games two, and then game 3, and then game 4, and hopefully games 5, 6, and 7, or hopefully it doesn't go that long. Hopefully the Kings win the next 4 in a row. All right, that's going to
Exactly.
wrap it up. I hope this didn't trend too positively or negatively for whoever's listening at home. Zach, thanks for joining me all the way from the Mile High City. And
Thanks for having me. That'll be altitude here.
yeah, and I don't know when the next time you and I will talk because we've got Jared Shaffron planned to do this with me after game 2. But travel safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.